Suit up.
Okay, Peter, you got this, you got this.
What the hell are you wearing?
It's my suit.
Where's the case?
I think the costume game in Phase 4 of the MCU has been incredible. It's a mix of classic comic outfits with more modern updates, and most of them look incredibly cool. With all the new characters that have been introduced in Phase 4, I wanted to make a ranking of the best Phase 4 suits and costumes we've seen so far.
Is this what you wanted?
Scarlet Witch, new Spider-Man, new Captain America, new Mr. Fantastic, where do they all rank? Let's find out right now. Okay, I wanted to start with the best and work my way down to the not so best. I can't help it, I want to get to all the good stuff first. And I think one of the best Phase 4 costumes has been Scarlet Witch. When she was first introduced, they were really trying to erase the magical part of the character and make it all Infinity Stone based. That gave her, in general, a red costume, but it was more modern clothing, which was a little lame. But Phase 4 decided to say screw it and give us a more magical Wanda, and we saw the birth of the Scarlet Witch in an excellent costume. And for added points, WandaVision was even able to throw in a cheesy, comic-accurate version of Scarlet Witch's costume thanks to the Halloween episode.
Wow, that is so
rad.
So overall, I think this costume is the best. Alright, am I already cheating? Maybe. This video is called Best Suits, but Professor X is so high on this list not because of the suit he's wearing, but more so because of the yellow chair he rides around on in Multiverse of Madness. This chair was a huge staple of the 90s animated X-Men show, and seeing Patrick Stewart actually get to ride around in one while the X-Men music plays in live action was everything I wanted in life. It not only highlights a general shift in embracing goofier aspects from the cartoon and the comics, but also perhaps informs audiences that the animated X-Men show will be very important to the MCU going forward. Too bad the chair didn't help Charles in live action though. We only got to see it for a few minutes before Wanda ripped Professor X's face in half in her own mind. Bummer. Sam Wilson is Captain America now, and the TV show did a great job in not only showcasing the weight behind Sam carrying the shield, but also why it was important for someone that wasn't a super soldier to take on the mantle. And the show all culminated in the new suit reveal, which is a comic-accurate suit made in Wakanda that successfully blends the Captain America aesthetic with Falcon capabilities. Seeing how Falcon is now able to bust into a room and beat up bad guys while also able to take to the skies for exciting aerial battles makes the new Captain America an incredibly versatile fighter, and that's thanks to his suit. Now sure, there's a big exposure to his head where his brain just happens to be, which I find to be a major flaw, but the look of the suit is so cool that I'm willing to overlook it. There's something about going back to basics that's so exciting for a character like Spider-Man. We all love Spidey, but his big criticism in the MCU was that he was immediately gifted one of the most technological suits imaginable, and that took away the scrappy element to his character a lot of comic readers loved. Well, No Way Home seemed to address that specifically, with the ending stripping everything away from Peter so that he could truly be the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man like in the comics. This led to him not wearing the Stark suit anymore, and instead wearing something more homemade, and it's bright and colorful and just screams comic book, which is just fantastic. Hopefully we see this suit in action for a bit before the Venom symbiote comes knocking and changes it up again. Spider-Man 4 has to be a black suit Spidey, right? Right? I think the Moon Knight costume tweak in the MCU actually surpasses the comics. In the comics, most of the time, the Moon Knight suit is just a literal suit that's put on, but in the MCU show, the suit is an extension of Khonshu's magic, making it a mystical suit. The look of it is great, and although we didn't see it in action too much, the parts we did see translated from the page to screen incredibly well. It's not only a cool looking suit, but also a very helpful one, as it's bulletproof and can protect Stephen and Mark when they need it. Also, the cool thing about Moon Knight's suit is that it's a 2-for-1. The show explains that Mark gets the full Moon Knight suit and Stephen gets the Mr. Knight suit, which helps differentiate their personalities. Again, another deviation from the comics, but definitely a good one. Now, what do we think Jake Lockley's costume will be like? Kamala Khan is a definite new bright spot in Phase 4. Her energy, her vibe, and her new connection to the mutant side of things will make her a great focal point as time goes on, and she certainly came a long way in terms of costumes. In the first episode, she was just an okay cosplayer, but by the end of the series, with her powers practically mastered and the blessing of her friends and family, she was able to become a full-fledged hero protecting her little corner of New Jersey. Although her powers will always face some contention given they are such a deviation from the source material, on top of the whole mutant thing, I think her costume is awesome, not only for the look, but for the way it came as a gift from her mom. That was such a sweet moment. I can't really think of another suit with such family-oriented backstory. Kingpin is back, and he's gone Hawaiian. Kingpin's return, or introduction, or whatever you want to call it, to the MCU may not have been the best thing story-wise, at least in my opinion, but it was so great seeing Vincent D'Onofrio not only back with his unique and compelling performance, but also gave Kingpin a different look that still remained comic accurate. The whole Hawaiian shirt outfit may seem silly to some, but that's actually a distinct look from the comic books, and it may hint at how this version of Kingpin will differ from the Kingpin we saw in the Daredevil Netflix show. And who knows, maybe the Hawaiian shirt gives him superpowers, because I still can't wait to see the explanation of how he could take an arrow in the chest, hit by a car, and take a minor explosion to the heart, and still be relatively okay. Alright, Taskmaster, I'm so torn on. On one hand, I debated putting this lower on the list. I think the Taskmaster comic costume is freaking amazing with its bulky frame and skull mask, and I do think the live action version is a step down from that. But also, the movie costume is pretty unique and cool in its own way. It fits with the movie and the story it was telling, and I can't really fault it for that. I like the orange and blue coloring, and I like how it still tried to adapt that terrifying skull mask, while still highlighting that this character has copied everyone's powers. Yeah, I may have been disappointed with the direction of the character, but that doesn't have anything to do with the costume. And with the door open for Taskmaster to return down the line, I'm excited to see the evolution of the costume over the next few years. When Baron Zemo first debuted in the MCU, it was during a time where his purple mask was probably a bit too goofy for adaptation. He was this super serious character, obsessed with revenge, and the movie never really needed him to don his signature outfit. But then, by Phase 4, everything had changed. Everyone was giddy about the announcement regarding Baron Zemo's return, and it was specifically announced and shown that he would be wearing the comic-accurate outfit at some point. What a wild change. And yeah, it's a great look and all, and now everyone is wanting to see Baron Zemo return thanks to his scene-stealing role, but I'll just say it. I thought the way the show used the outfit was out of place. He wore it for a quick second in order to cause some chaos, and then immediately took it off. What gives? Just wear it the whole time, Zemo. Loki's first season introduced us to a bunch of different variants of the trickster god, and one of the most memorable had to have been a classic Loki. This was a version of Loki sporting a goofy looking costume that seemed to be ripped right out of a comic book. Well, that's because it was. The look is clearly an homage to classic Loki costumes from the Marvel comics, and it's glorious. It also highlights how campy the MCU's version of Loki could have been if not for the layered and charismatic performance by Tom Hiddleston. He turns Loki into a suave, charming, devilishly handsome trickster, where this classic Loki costume instead screams, "I'm available to rent for children's birthday parties." Overall, though, it was wonderful to see. I especially love the horns. Tom Hiddleston's Loki has a horned helmet that seems ready for battle, while classic Loki's horns look like they were plucked from a moose. Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin is one of a kind for a very particular costume decision. He's probably the only one on this list who gets a costume improvement by taking off the mask. The original Green Goblin outfit is a lot of campy fun, and it especially fits within the first Spider-Man movie. But Willem Dafoe has one of the most unique, expressive, and, I'm very sorry to say this, goblin-y faces in the business. Everyone always made fun of the fact that Green Goblin would have been scarier without the mask, and No Way Home listened to that request and followed through with it. Think of the moment where Peter is beating up Green Goblin in the hallway and Norman is just smiling. That's one of the best moments for the character ever, and it's all because he got a costume upgrade that consisted of him stripping away the costume. How nuts is that? Hawkeye has had some questionable and bland costumes in the MCU, along with some questionable haircuts, but the Hawkeye TV show finally allowed him to don more comic-accurate duds, and the results were a lot of fun. For the longest time, Hawkeye was this serious spy working for S.H.I.E.L.D. and the Avengers, so of course he couldn't wear bright purple. But the circumstances surrounding the Hawkeye TV show paired Clint with Kate Bishop, who was adamant about helping the grumpy Archer into embracing his superhero side with some new digs. There will probably be some that weren't happy with Hawkeye and its tone, but I thought it was a lighthearted romp that got Hawkeye into some full-on purple for once, and not some lame semi-purple, but tactically superior weapon armor or whatever he was in before. For Captain Carter, we were lucky to see two different designs for this character, one in animated form from the What If TV show and one in the Multiverse of Madness. My question is, do you prefer one over the other? Ignoring the fact that one of them saved the entire multiverse while the other one met a much more gruesome fate, do you think there was a significant costume difference? The answer, as far as I can tell, is no. Both have the Union Jack flag displayed confidently on their costumes and their shield, and it just looks really cool. Do you think Captain Carter ever went through an awkward costume phase like Steve Rogers in the first Big Avengers movie? I hope not. We've seen Ultron before, we've seen Vision before, we've seen Thanos with the Infinity Gauntlet before, but Phase 4 gave us a terrifying new multiversal threat. In a universe where Ultron succeeded in his plan and made himself the almost invincible Vision body, things turned even worse when Thanos came knocking and UltronVision split him in two in about 0.5 seconds. He then took the Infinity Stones and became the sinister figure that threatened to take over literally everything. The design of this was cool, and it successfully meshed together all the key elements from Ultron, from Vision, and even from Thanos to create a very powerful threat. Like, kudos to the design team and animators for drafting a character that looks like the big bad of everything ever, right? I would call Shang-Chi's costume in the MCU relatively harmless. It's definitely middle of the road for me in terms of style and design, but there's also not anything wrong with it. Like, on paper, I think it's a nice adaptation that successfully adapts the sometimes goofier one-suit costumes that Shang-Chi wears in the comics and updates it to modern times. He's looking stylish and also has his arms consistently free to do all his amazing martial arts, so that's a win-win right there. But I do wonder if we're coming up on a major costume upgrade. Shang-Chi's costume was cool, but it was in line with what was given to him. What happens now that Shang-Chi is an Avenger and probably has access to the Avengers' personal tailor? Only time will tell. The Mighty Thor is another one that I'm having trouble placing. I loved that first trailer of Thor 4 revealing Jane Foster as the Mighty Thor, and I loved it in the movie as well. Seeing a buff Natalie Portman in Asgardian armor is a life-changing experience, let me tell you. But as cool as the costume is, it would be higher on this list if not for Jane's helmet. I know CGI isn't everything, and a good story can be told with questionable CGI budgets and be just fine, but there's something about Love and Thunder that looks so cheap. Anyways, I say this because Jane's helmet doesn't look like it's actually on her head, but rather it's all CGI to add onto her face. Maybe Natalie Portman didn't want to wear a helmet for real. Maybe the helmet would mess up Portman's hair and we can't have that. So for whatever reason, although the costume is cool, the helmet is a big distraction. I know there's a vocal version of the internet who hated on John Krasinski's Mr. Fantastic suit, and while I don't think it's necessarily a great suit either, I don't think it's necessarily bad. It's practically the best update we're gonna get. The Fantastic Four have costumes that are, in a way, just blue jumpsuits, and there's not much creativity you can do with that. Mr. Fantastic needs a fantastic actor playing him to detract from the less than exciting costume. Hey, but if we're talking practical costumes instead of aesthetically pleasing costumes, then the Fantastic Four costumes might win. They can withstand extreme stretching, intense bursts of heat, and invisibility. With that in mind, the MCU suit is pretty cool. But what do you think? You think there's a way to spruce the costume up in the future? Let me know what you think below. I think White Vision was a cool addition to the MCU that's now an interesting and intriguing plot threat. Paul Bettany trolled all of us in WandaVision, hyping up working with an actor I've always wanted to work with, and before anyone could guess who would be joining the MCU, it just turned out to be Bettany playing a different evil version of Vision. White Vision is such a unique look, but I think the MCU pulled it off pretty well. The costume is less colorful than Vision, but it does make him look like a more evil version sentient robot, so that's an interesting shift. I wish I could go into more detail for this entry, but White Vision is pretty self-explanatory. Is he the villain with the most obvious name? Like, if I hear Baron Zemo, I have no idea what that guy is capable of, but when I hear White Vision, I immediately get it. You know, because he's all white. Electro's transformation was pretty funny in No Way Home in how they just basically ignored his dweeby weird blue self and then just made him look like cool Jamie Foxx. Hey, I'm not mad at it. And while the suit he wore was interesting because of the arc reactor addition, I think the truly fun part was having the electricity form around his body and head to create the signature star look. Maybe having him in a full-on green spandex costume was out of the question, but they found a way to have his star on his face while still looking cool. And I love it when costumes are able to do that. It's nothing major, so it's lower on this list, but still really cool. The Eternals costumes are fine and basically passable, but really they should be more. They have passable battle suits in the movie and we can spend more time on the actor, which is nice and all, but the Eternals have such bright and colorful costumes in the comics that you can't help but wish more was done about it. Their individual color palettes would have been better than the sort of uniformity that the current costumes have. And although she wasn't in her armor too much, I just wanted to mention I always liked how Ajax was dressed for every major event happening in the world with the same color scheme, blue and yellow. What did you think of the Eternals costumes compared to the others? Do you think Phase 4 is getting more comic accurate with their costumes? Are there any heroes or villains you want to see with a different costume than what we've seen so far? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching CBR. See you next time.